Nice.
Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a two-time winner of America's Strongest Man. He also has multiple top 5 finishes at World's Strongest Man event and 3 third-place finishes at Arnold Classic. He holds over 20 world records. Welcome to the show, Travis Ortmayer.
What's up? Nice to be here.
Man, I'm stoked to have you on the show. We had a little chat before we dove in, and I've been following World's Strongest Man, so I'm always interested in how the hell you guys are able to do what you do. But that's only part of your story. Getting to know you a little bit. You've had a very interesting path of life that I think is incredibly inspiring and also challenging. So I just love for you to start us off with a little bit about who you are and your journey, and we'll dive into all that good stuff.
You touched on it a little bit. I've been competing in Strongman now for 21 years. I started a week before my 21st birthday. And, I wasn't even supposed to compete at that competition, but a friend of mine was competing and I was going to help him out. Got talked into it the night before. I said, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. And that completely changed my life because I had more fun doing that competition than I had ever done, than I had ever had doing anything my entire life. So I had this plan for school and, a respectable life, let's say. And then Strongman came in. I took a sharp right turn, completely off the charts. But yeah, man, I've had, a lot of ups and downs throughout my life. And people call it wisdom and character building and whatever you want to call it. It's been a rough road, but it's been one that I wouldn't change for anything. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I absolutely love my life. I love where I've been. I love that I can say that I've done things that no one else has ever done. I wouldn't trade it.
Well, that's amazing, man. I know a little bit about your story from watching some of your interviews and also some of the strength feats, which I feel like when people look at World's Strongest Man or what you guys do, they're immediately drawn to that. I was like, holy smokes, you're deadlifting, 800, 900,000 pounds, holding up hundreds of pounds over your head, just like literally things that are impossible to do. So as an athlete and a human being, you're literally one of the strongest people to ever walk the planet, which is unbelievably impressive. And we could kind of, touch on that, which I think, a lot of the podcasts, we talk about performance, the mindset, and we were talking a little bit about Zen Athlete before we started, then this merger of the inner world. But what you went through as a human being, kind of like getting to the depths of darkness and despair and what you had to go through to then come back, I think might even be more impressive. So I don't know where you want to start us off, if you want to kind of talk about that journey or you want to move into some of the World's Strongest Man stuff, but both of them I think are equally valuable and incredibly inspiring.
I could walk you through it a little bit. So I started competing a week before my 21st birthday, changed my life. Then I poured my heart and soul into it, into training, into competing, into traveling for the competitions. And, I got my pro card 2 years after I started. I won the amateur U.S. national championships. And by the next year, I had already gotten to the world championships. So I kind of rose pretty quickly through the ranks. At that point, I think I was only 24 and, or 25. I think it was right after my 25th birthday. So anyway, took 10th the first 2 years at world championships. Didn't have a great 2007 because I had injured my back at the Arnold Classic. And I was competing basically with a herniated disc all year long. One of the more painful things that I've done. Probably one of the stupider things that I've done. I should have taken time off to heal that. But, I pushed hard. I loved what I was doing. And, did 3, well, it was called IFSA World Championships. This is at a point where World's Strongest Man and IFSA, who provided the athletes for World's Strongest Man split. So all the top athletes were with IFSA for these 3 years, and then they kind of merged back together in 2008. And so I did 2008, 9, 10, and 11 World's Strongest Man. So 7 world championships by 2011. And by the beginning of 2012, I had done 5 Arnold Strongman Classic competitions. I think you touched on it earlier. I took third at 2 of those. But I was pushing really, really hard. I never took a break. I never took it easy. And I mean, I loved what I was doing. I loved traveling overseas. I loved competing. And, you know, I loved it so much that I would do one show after another. And a couple of times I did 5 in a row, you know, where I started in America, I went overseas, came back to America, went overseas, and came back to America for another contest. I remember on the 4th leg of that trip, when I was trying to come home, I was in some airport and I couldn't remember where I had landed. I lost my ticket and I couldn't remember what airport or what country I was in. So I started listening around, you know, for accents, languages, and I hear French, but then I hear German, but then I hear Italian, I hear English, and I hear some other languages. I'm like, oh shit, man, where am I? I've never been to this airport. I have no idea where I am. And I can't figure out what country it is because it's every language. Turns out I was in Switzerland, where it's just a huge mix of everything. But anyway, I made it onto that next flight and competed at my 5th competition in a row. And, you know, 3 weeks later, I think I competed in another one. So no downtime, you know. And basically what I was doing was I was burning the candle at both ends. And then I started blowtorch in the middle when I started competing after taking painkillers. Just pushing so hard through injuries. I had like a physician's assistant, kind of doctor friend. It's actually a parent of a friend of mine. Anyway, he said, you know, you should come in and we'll prescribe you some Norcos and, you know, something that you can keep training. And, you know, with what you do, you hurt so much, you should probably come in for these. Now I knew that was a bad idea. I had that little voice in the back of your head. The first time I had ever really heard it, second time actually, and it said, this is a bad idea. But I ignored it. And turns out it was right, because it didn't take me long, but I got hooked. And I didn't realize what would happen. You know, I knew that wasn't a great idea, but I didn't know quite what to expect as far as becoming addicted to it. And then once you're addicted, there's this whole stigma of, oh, you're a freaking drug addict now. And so you don't want to admit it to anybody. You certainly don't want to ask for help. And if you did, like, where do you go for help? I had no idea about any of that. So I just pushed on. And I think that allowed me to keep competing at the insane rate that I was doing. I was doing 18 to 20 competitions a year. And these are
and these
brutal
shows. Yeah, and I just want to make one comment on that. Strongman is something where it's more ideal to do only a few shows a year, similar to like NFL football. You know, there's a huge toll on the body, so they have a big off season when they go through it. It's very, you know, physically taxing on everything, and so it's more ideal to just do a few shows where you peak at, rather than running through the gauntlet, which you chose to do, where, you know, maybe you can jog light for a long period of time, but the stress of the strongman events is like, you want to let the body recover, you want it to heal up and then go back. But if you keep doing it over and over, it can be
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think ideally you do 2 or 3 competitions a year. I was doing 10 times as many. But yeah, so I mean, I kept competing, I kept pushing, and that, you know, that's what I mean by burning the candle at both ends. And then the painkillers was like taking a blowtorch to the middle, and I got burned out. I got burned out really bad. I had an injury at the 2010 World's Strongest Man final where I broke my ankle halfway through, and I was in first place at the time, and I had my 3 better events the next day. So I wasn't going to quit, and I gave it hell. I limped about 50 feet with a 800-pound frame I did well on the deadlift that day, but I did poorly on the stones, and I ended up in 5th place for my 3rd time in a row of being 5th place in the finals. So that injury beat me up pretty good. That was took a long time to heal, and I just kept pushing on it anyway. It hurt me the entire next year. And I competed at the Arnold Classic, which is the heaviest show of the year, about 5 months later, with my foot still taped up and in a brace. Miserable, man. It hurt, but I ended up 4th. So I thought, well, I guess I can keep doing this. So I competed all of 2011. And by the end of 2011, I started to hate training. I started to hate competing. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was so burned out that I just couldn't stand the thought of going to the gym again. And then let's just think about it this way. My life had been wrapped up in training. Since I was 11 years old, I've been lifting weights. I loved lifting weights. It's all I've ever done. As passionate as I can be about it. Now I've got this huge chunk of my life that's a big void. All this time that I'd normally devote to training and improving myself, I couldn't stand doing it. So I had this empty space. And then, if you're not careful and if you don't plan out when you take something like that out of your life, that space is going to be filled with something else. And it's usually not going to be anything good, self-destructive, especially with where my mindset was at that time, because I was so burned out. So kind of back up a little bit, like leading up to this point, I was married. I had a son. I still have a son. I was married. But we started to grow apart because painkillers don't just numb you physically, they numb you mentally as well. And so we kind of became distant and we separated, in this time of 2012, we separated and that led to the absolute most painful day of my entire life. The worst pain I've ever felt was the day that I took them to the airport. My ex-wife was from England. So our plan was to go over to England, set things up there and try, to fix our relationship there. And that little voice in the back of my head popped up and said, this is a bad idea because no, that's not what she wants to do. She's just trying to get out of the country. And I knew I was going to be phased out of this plan of going over, getting things set up in England. And I was supposed to sell the house. So I stayed behind to take care of that. But anyway, so I took them to the airport and I had that intuition, that little voice screaming at me. This is a terrible idea. This is a terrible idea. Don't let them go. But I ignored it, told it to shut up. So it's the right thing. We have to do this. I want to try and make things right over there. I was delusional. I was lying to myself. Anyway, I remember my son getting his car's backpack and his little Lightning McQueen hat and then dragging his suitcase with this big smile on his face. He was excited because he was going on an adventure. He'd been on planes several times at that point. So he knew he was going on an adventure. Then my wife grabs his hand and they start walking away. And the moment those doors at the airport closed behind them, I felt this like shattered feeling in my heart. It was like some scar had just opened up across my entire heart. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt in my life. And I've competed on a broken ankle. I've done some painful things. Nothing compared to that. Not even close. So, I was pretty shattered at that point. And I wanted to get away from that pain. I didn't know what to do. So I had a friend offer me speed, so crystal meth at one point. So I decided to take her up on that offer. And I said, Travis, you've got a week, just do what you got to do. You want to get lost? That's fine. after a week, we're going to clean things up and we're going to finish selling the house and we're going to really make a move to get to England. And that week turned into 4 years. So the plan, didn't really stick to the plan. I just got lost. I got lost in trying to hide from that pain. I got lost in trying to, get away from everything. It was like a perfect storm of things that could go wrong, went wrong. And I could feel everything spiraling down quickly. If I had a long, steady downward slope with the painkillers and the training and all that, pushing too hard, once the meth came into my life, it's like I fell off a cliff. Everything just went to shit so fast. Every wrong decision that I could make, that was the one I'd choose. Every wrong thing I could say, that's what I would say. I don't know how. It's like I knew exactly what the worst idea was. And the Travis out here would choose that. Now, the Travis back here, that intuition, he always knew what was going on. And it was like I was aware of all the things that were going wrong, but I was powerless to stop it. It was like I was just, back here, just a passenger watching this idiot out front make all the worst decisions possible. So that's, when I say it was a perfect storm of things that could go wrong, my wife had left me, taken my son, and I wanted a son my entire life. I love my son. It's just a side story. I remember finding a box of baseball gloves one day when I was having a garage sale, trying to get rid of all my stuff so I could move. I found a box of baseball gloves, and there was a left-handed mitt. Now, a left-handed thrower, so right-handed mitt. I remember when I found that mitt, I told myself I was going to keep it because one day I'm going to teach my son how to throw a baseball and he might be left-handed. And then I thought back to when I found that mitt. I was 9 years old. So what kind of 9-year-old thinks about how they're going to teach their son? But that's what I always did, man. Every lesson I learned, I thought, how can I do this better? How can I teach this better? And that was ripped away from me. You think about all the other things that I was doing wrong. So like my friends started turning their backs on me. No one would return phone calls. Family kind of turned their back on me. It was just a mess. I was hurting so bad. I was so miserable. I'm sure I was a nightmare to be around because I was just probably unpleasant as hell. Everybody kind of turned their back on me. And then I lost my job as a personal trainer. I was messing up and showing up too late. And, so I can't blame anybody else because this was all my fault. Everything was my fault that was taken away. I've lost my family, I lost my friends, I lost my job as a trainer, I lost my passion as an athlete, I lost my competition side, my competitive side, I lost my professional strongman competitions, something that I had devoted every fiber of my being to for years. And then I lost, all my money because I wasn't making anything. So then I lost my house. It was like everything that could go wrong went wrong, every freaking thing. So that just kept furthering, the spiral, making things worse. And I noticed these things going wrong. And I started to notice, every time I would think about something that was upsetting, I would start thinking about everything that I had lost. So, I've got my list. I lost my friends, I lost my family, I lost my job, I lost my career, I lost my house, I lost my passion, I lost this, I lost that, blah, 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 blah. And it was just like a cycle. I would say this every time I started to get down on myself. Well, you lost this, you lost that. It was just like a knee-jerk reaction. And Then one day, I had tried calling my son. I tried to talk to him at least 4 or 5 times a week. But it had been several days and I got the voicemail again. And every time I heard the voicemail, it was like another, stab in the heart. So I just got really, really down on myself that day. And I was ready to end it. I wanted to be done. I'd been down for a long time. It was a couple of years of this hell, and I was tired of it. And I just wanted a way out. So I thought about shooting myself, and I had the gun ready to go. And I remember thinking what stopped me was thinking about the poor bastard who'd have to clean up my brains off the wall. And I thought, that's an odd thing to think, like in the moment, like that's what you think of somebody else. Like, what the fuck, man? And I kind of thought, wow, okay, maybe I'm not ready to do this. So I put the gun down and, visibly shaken by the whole experience. And I thought, I can't live like this, man. I guess this is not how I want to live my life anymore. So I started looking around. I'm like, this is hell. I'm in a tweaker house. My house has become a mess. It's become a tweaker nightmare. And everywhere I looked, I saw my son, some memory of my son. So it was like pain every freaking time I looked anywhere, did anything. And so I looked around and I thought, I gotta, I caught myself doing that negativity list. And I said, how did I get here? Well, I lost this, I lost that, I lost blah, 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 blah. And I went, wait a second, man. Every time you say this, things get worse. Every time you say this, things get worse. So I said, I got to switch this up, man. Let's find something positive. Let's find something good. If I can make everything get worse by thinking about the negative, maybe the converse is true. And every time I think of something positive, things will get better. So I tried it and I looked around, and again, man, I had a tweaker house. I was trying to find something positive to see. And all I saw was a mess, and I saw painful memories everywhere. So I was going to give up. I remember putting my head in my hands and I'm looking down at my feet and I see my toes move. And I thought, well, shit, you know what? At least I've still got my own 2 feet. And it's like, with these 2 feet, you know what? I can get up and I don't have to stay in this shithole. I can get the fuck out of here. I could walk out of here at any minute. And when I said that, and I had that understanding that with my own 2 feet, I can get out of here, I had this surge of joy come up from the pit of my stomach. It was the first time I'd felt joy in years. And it was intense and it felt amazing. Because I could feel it wrapping around my heart, that heart that was hurt so bad. For the first time in years, felt this warmth around it. And so I said, wow, that's powerful. And I kind of thought about, man, that's all it took was my own 2 feet. Okay. I sat with that. I went to bed and got up the next day and I said, I want that feeling again. I want that. And so I said, let's find one more thing to be positive about. So again, I started looking around. I'm looking for something big, to be positive about, something. But I look around and my house is, again, a shithole with painful memories. And I thought, we got to look smaller. We got to go a lot smaller. Start finding something little. I said, if I got my own 2 feet, I got my own 2 hands still. And my hands are still really strong. With these 2 feet and these 2 hands, I could get up and I could go anywhere and I could do anything. Again, I don't have to be here because I've got the power to get out. And that surge of joy came back up, hit me just as hard as the day before. So the 3rd day, I found a 3rd thing. The 4th day, I found a 4th thing. On the 5th day, I didn't find a new thing. So I went through my first 4. Now I've got a gratitude list. That was my 5th thing. That was probably the second most, aside from the very first day, as the most important thing. So now, anytime I start thinking negative, I blocked it off and I went through my gratitude list. I went through my positivity list. So whenever because it was such a knee-jerk reaction, anytime I'd start to be down on myself, well, I lost this, I lost that, I I cut it off, and then I went through, but I have this, I have this, I have this. And then it would fight, that joy would fight its way back up. And so that was probably the thing, that was the realization, without a doubt, that was the realization that saved my life, was to realize my perception of reality is what creates my reality. Now, it's important to note for anyone who tries this, if you have a lot of negative momentum, it's going to take a lot of conscious effort to reverse that. And so for a while, it took me a solid year before I had any kind of real momentum going in a positive direction. Now, in that year of really working hard and finding every little trick that I could to keep positive, one of the things that I did was keep a little rock in my pocket, just a little pebble, something that looked cool, a piece of quartz or something. Something that let me know that it was my rock. And that was my gratitude rock. Every time I put my hand in my pocket, if I'm pulling my phone out or I'm getting my keys or whatever, I'd feel that rock and I would take it out and I would look at it and I would tell myself that gratitude list. So there was a little reminder there. And then anytime I started doing the negative checklist, I would block it off. That was my reminder of consciously. I mean, it took some work sometimes to really focus on the positive things, because things were still going very wrong for me, but when I caught myself doing these negative checklists, I would consciously make the effort to stop it and reverse that momentum. And I knew this was really starting to make waves when the people around me started getting upset by it a little bit. Some people were really on board with it, but some people, misery loves company. And when you're mixed in that crowd, it's not because everybody's happy. It's because everybody has their own shit they're running from. And I remember this one woman looking at me and saying, "What do you have to be so grateful for?" And I thought to myself, well, that's one right there, man, because I'm fucking shaking up your world. Yeah, man. So I started to reverse the momentum. And then I realized that the house was in and of itself, a trigger for me for unhappiness, because I had all these sad memories there. And I knew that I was going to lose it. I'd already been foreclosed on. I kind of fought the foreclosure. I had about 2 years where I was able to stay in there. And finally, I knew time was running out. I knew I was going to get evicted. So I just went ahead and said, you know what? All of my negativity is just in this house. It's no longer in me. It's in this house. And this house is my prison. And I can't wait to be freed from this prison. Now, I knew that I couldn't get myself out of there. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to just get up and make the effort to move and start a new life. I knew I was going to have to be forced. So I went ahead and waited. And I put all that negativity in it. The day came. It was beginning of October in 2015. The day came. So now here we are, 4 years later of being in this hell. And they came and kicked me out. And it was upsetting. It was a hard thing to be kicked out of your house. But this guy back here kept saying, it's like, this is freedom. This is freedom. This is the time. You knew this was coming. Now we're free. So it was kind of balanced, this painful memory, this painful situation, with this sense of freedom, with this sense of like chains being taken off. I felt light for the first time in years. And so I kept my gratitude list, and I ended up getting a storage unit, or I had a storage unit, but I ended up living in that storage unit for about 3 months. I was trying to save money because my parents had moved to Reno a couple of years prior to this. And my mom had gotten sick. So I wanted to go out and see them, kind of see what I could do to help her. She had liver failure, so she needed someone to help. So I saved money for about 3 months living in the storage unit. And, that was kind of an interesting time in and of itself. But, I still was using meth. And I knew that that was going to be an issue to try and quit that. I knew I'd have to do something kind of like how I freed myself from my house. I knew I needed a circumstance to finally push me over the edge of quitting it. And so I took when I saved enough money to drive to Reno, I loaded up my truck, and that was going to be my push to finally free myself from that addiction. I made sure I had no connections. I had a set amount that I was going to have to divvy out, in decreasing amounts each day. And so it was very strict. I didn't have any chance to re-up. So I took 10 days to drive from Houston to Reno. And I stopped where I wanted to stop. I slept when I wanted to sleep. I went by the Grand Canyon. I went there. I got there at midnight one night, and I pulled off to the side of the road, just in a parking lot. I had no idea. It was pitch black. Couldn't see anything. This was New Year's Eve, 2015. So New Year's Day, 2016, I wake up with the sun coming up over the rim of the canyon right in front of me. It was like, if that ain't a sign for new beginnings, I don't know what is. So that was liberating, man. That drive finally broke me free of the shackles of addiction. And when I got to Nevada, when I got to Reno, I had nothing left, and I had no plans of finding anybody. And it was that experience that finally freed me from that addiction. Because I tried to stop several times. When it was painkillers early on, when it was meth, I had tried to quit so many times. But painkiller addiction is awful. Withdrawals are awful. And I had no idea that it was going to be that bad. And I had no idea that it was going to get any better. So I never made it through. Funny enough, when I started the meth, I didn't need the painkillers. So that's kind of what happened, why I got stuck on the meth, was because I was like, hey, I could take this for a little bit and still quit that painkiller addiction. And I can quit this anytime. And it didn't work out like that. But, but the getting off meth, you have this horrible depression where it's just, you don't see the end. It's this dark tunnel, and you're just so depressed, no energy, nothing. It's because you have a dopamine crash, essentially. Well, I figured out the trick without realizing it, how to get off meth. You need to have an adventure. You need to have a mission, something where there is constant novelty. Hey, yeah. Sorry. So constant novelty where, basically novelty is dopamine kick, so I had this novelty that was keeping my dopamine going. So it kept me from crashing, and it was like I was in the middle of nowhere. So I had no choice but to keep going. I didn't have time to be depressed. I didn't have time to collapse and feel sorry for myself. So that was the secret right there. For anybody watching, anybody that knows anybody, or anybody that is addicted, set up a mission where you have to get out of your environment. Give yourself a finite amount and then dole it out accordingly, but keep going. Keep finding new adventure. Go see national parks, go see whatever. Have a mission, because that's what keeps you going. That's what avoids that crash at the end. Then I got to Reno the 7th of January, 2016. And I hung out with my family for a few days, then started getting the itch to train again. I hadn't worked out for 4 years, but I was finally getting the itch to work out. So I went to the gym, and at my highest body weight in Strongman, I was 341, strong as an ox. I lost everything that I had gained through Strongman. My very first competition, I was 227 pounds. The day I walked into the gym in 2016, I was 227 pounds exactly. It's like I had to restart and redo everything. But I had the fire again, man. I had the passion. I felt like me again. I went to the gym because I loved it, not because it was an obligation, not because I thought I should. It was because I wanted to. And that was, that's, I guess, a long-winded answer to that question about kind of my story, my background. I started competing again 2 years after I started training, and I have since made it back to World's Strongest Man. I've competed in about 12 or 15 shows around the world. Set a new world record a few years ago. I guess it's been an adventure. Let's just say that.
Wow, man. Well, I'm grateful for you sharing that entire story, because there's so much gold in sharing that. Like, it's just hearing your story is inspiring in itself, but it's also practical, because it's interesting. You're talking about this negative loop, and that's the switch that you have, is learning to cut it off. And that's something that I talk about on the podcast a lot, is just becoming aware of your patterns. And then that was the one thing, among other things, that help you switch, right? Nipping it in the butt, because we go to this automatic pattern of, here's the negative list, and then we dwell on it and we give it more energy. To consciously start to do that is incredibly powerful. And then the other thing, sharing, just, it didn't happen overnight, because you have all this negative momentum build up. And it's the same thing in our bodies, right? Over that 4-year experience of not training, well, now you're in a negative deficit physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, where now you have to start from there now and then build back up. It's not like, unfortunately, you can do this one thing and then everything is hunky-dory. It's like that drive that's able to, the process. Yeah. And I'm curious, in that journey, like, what was do you think it was like necessary for your life experience? Did you learn something from that process that you would want to offer people now? Because it's such a painful thing that you described, like your family going away, losing everything, getting like, it's a horrible thing. It really is the bottom of the barrel, but now you're here on the other side sharing this story. So what was the biggest takeaway? And do you think it was something necessary that you had to go through to share, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I walk this path so others don't have to. And that's why I share my story. I want people to realize, maybe some of the things that they're doing, so the warning signs they could pay attention to so they don't have to. But, as much as I would love to be able to keep people from themselves, sometimes some of us are really hard-headed assholes, and we're just going to have to crash and burn. So for those people, I want to show them that there's hope. That as long as you put one foot in front of the other and you keep having faith that the road is going to rise up to meet you, you will get to where you want to go. You have to keep going. And I just want to show people that it's possible. It's not only possible to come out of addiction, but it's possible to rise to greatness once again. Aspire to something more than just being clean. And that's where I kind of get frustrated with people, because they're just like, oh, I'm so grateful that I'm clean and I've got my job at the grocery store and I'm grateful that I can keep that. Like, why don't you aspire to more? Now, maybe your job at the grocery store is cool. That's fine. But maybe you could do more. Maybe you could do something better. And that's where I want people to realize, it ain't over. It ain't over until you're buried in the ground. And as long as you're up on your own 2 feet, or you're consciously aware of the world around you, then keep striving to become better. Because it's possible. Because it's totally possible. I mean, if I can do it, literally anybody can. It just takes time and tenacity and that one foot in front of the other mentality.
Yeah. And what advice would you give for people who like are at the bottom of the barrel? Like, if they could hear anything that might, like, do you think when you were at the bottom, if you got a piece of advice or something would help, or yeah, if they're at the bottom and they just lost hope, like what's one thought or one tool that you'd offer them to start to stick it around? Because I know when you're deep in depression, you can't think about doing something excellent. You're just trying to get through the day and end the suffering, then alone having an inspiring vision.
So there's a few things that you can do. One is make a gratitude list. Find something simple to be grateful for, because what that does is that takes that negative filter and switches it with a positive one. Now you're seeing the same picture completely different. So that's one of the most important things, is to change your perception. But the other one would be, so I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Purpose. Find a purpose. Find something bigger than you. Find something greater than yourself, and shoot for it. Like, try and become whatever that purpose is. Dedicate your life to it. And that could be, to a higher power. That could be, for me, it was getting back to World's Strongest Man so that I could show others that this is possible. That was my purpose, to show people that no matter how bad you fuck up in life, you can always get up and keep moving forward.
Yeah. And I think that alone is such a huge lesson for every single man or woman who has ever existed, because life is about failure in the sense that we're always going to fail. That's one of the beautiful things about skateboarding, is if you skateboard, you recognize 95% of it is failing, and then, you get it. And so there's a huge gift in that. And so many young people, they think that, we have this trajectory and you just get there, and you don't realize some of these struggles or these downfalls or these challenges and how hard it might get. And to know that you always have another chance, that no matter how far you've gone the other way, it's possible to come back, in itself is just truly inspiring. And ideally, through people's stories like yours, we don't have to go so far out. And I've given the example before. It's kind of like, you have this, like, say, life purpose or path, right? And you have that intuition in the back of your mind of the choices you make. And the more you veer off, the more your outer world starts to fall apart, right? To eventually like it crumbling, right? So it veers off in your job, and then you lose the job. It veers off in working, and then you lose your house, you lose your family. And so you're not getting the external signals, or you're unable to change for whatever reason. But the more you can get back into alignment, once you start to veer off, you'll notice and be able to make a course correction a little quicker. So maybe you're drinking a little bit on the weekends, but once it starts to go more and more and more, and you're getting this bigger feedback loop, if you don't nip it in the butt, you're going to keep getting more negative stimulus until you get zapped back in the middle. But the beautiful thing that you're saying is, no matter how far you go off track, bushwhacking into the darkness, that it's possible to come back. And I think that in itself is truly inspiring.
It's all about having that true north, I guess, that point on the compass, so that you know which way is the right way for you. No matter which way you end up getting turned, if you know where that point is, you can always come back around. It's, sometimes easier said than done, and it can get real, like you say, bushwhacked in the dark. It's because I was definitely down there, man. I was in the darkness, and there was no light. There was no hope, no way out. And then I guess I had a little pinprick of light. That was my only true north. I had a pinprick of hope, and that was, I can get back to World's Strongest Man. It was always in the back of my head. As far away as everything went, this guy back here kept that true north. And so I could, as lost as I got in the dark, I kept moving towards that light.
That's amazing, man. That's beautiful. Well, I could talk to you all day. I know that you've got some other things to do. You're a busy man. Is there anything that you wish that we had talked about, or anything that you want to close us with? I'm happy to talk to you all day, but I know you got some things to do. So
coaching. So I've taken what I've learned and I've applied it to my coaching. I have a lot of athletes that compete in strongman, powerlifting, or just getting in shape in general. A lot of just, dads who are wanting to get off the couch and kind of lead their families by example, set a good example to them. And anyway, so that, so that's what I'm passionate about on, in addition to my strongman competitions, is teaching other people how to get the most out of their body, but life as well. it's something I'm passionate about. You know, I talk about how my whole life I was learning lessons so that I could teach them better to my son. Well, the teaching is in my blood. I've got a family full of teachers and preachers and coaches, so I can't help but do this. so, um, so I've taken that passion and I've helped share it with all of my clients.
Oh, that's amazing, man. And I think it's so important that we have a strong body, man or woman. You know, in the biblical text, it talks about, honoring the temple, right? In martial arts, it's mind, body, spirit. And in just general life, it's your body. It's common sense. So why not see how strong our body can be? And I love the Stoics, Aristotle and Socrates. And if you look at these old Stoics, they're all jacked. They are absolutely jacked. And they talk about the importance of developing the physical body. And there are people and philosophers out there that have more quotes around this, but the general idea is, if you're a man specifically, and it's the same with women, I believe as well, but you can't be a philosopher unless you've mastered your body. If you're talking to me anything about spirituality, about personal development and life, and you don't have a strong, capable body, then your wisdom isn't as strong. Now, I'm sure there's some outliers, but I just don't see why, barring any kind of physical thing, you wouldn't honor the body, because it's one of the things, it's our main tool. It is available to master, and it's important to master to at least have it vital, some vitality, and it's available to absolutely everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's something to be said about mastering yourself before trying to master the world around you. Absolutely. It kind of goes under that idea of time under tension. It's like coaches who are fat and out of shape trying to tell you how to get in shape. They may know like the right process, but it's hard to listen to somebody who has never been there and done that at some level. I mean, obviously, we're not going to all have coaches that are world-class athletes, but a coach who has at least pushed him or herself to their maximum. And then that makes it easier for you to follow suit so that they can push you to your maximum.
100%. And that's where the wisdom comes from. And there's this, the, I don't know, the unseen knowledge, or it's like this intangible character. When I was training with the Shaolin monks, like, these guys were incredible, and they kind of had this like air about them from actual mastery. And then you have charlatans that will say, oh, I break stone like this. And there's like a lot of ones in the past, like 80s and 90s, and actually still today, where people say they use their chi, and I feel like I call that black magic, because you're deceiving people. It's like doing the world's strongest man with fake weights, right? It's like, I didn't actually achieve that. What what you had to go through to lift 800 pounds, or what are some of your world records? But I just say deadlift. It's like, it's absurd. Like, what I've had to go through, I'm almost at 500 and I'm only like 2 years into it because I have a snowboard background. To most people, that's absurd. To a strong man, they're doing it with one friggin' hand. And the effort I had to put in to get there is extraordinary, but it's also available to everybody to have a strong, vibrant body. And maybe they're more into gymnastics or other things like I was, or cardio, whatever it is for you. There's an immense value in knowing and pushing your body. And it's one of the easiest ways to know yourself and extend physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because you go to this space where something else takes over and you go beyond what your limits are, and you're breaking through this old model of yourself, right? It's pushing. There's immense value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think, was it Socrates who said it's a shame for a man to grow old and never know what his body's capable of?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, man. So this has been an absolute pleasure. I talked to you all day. Like, maybe we'll do another one where we just go into some of like the training tactics, inspiring, and especially men out there, because some of this podcast covers, and I saw one of your comments on YouTube. I'm glad you spoke up. Some of the stuff that's going on in the world. As a martial artist, I've always thought, like, when do I step in and prevent harm? Like, because you have, like, you are massive, and like, you could stop people physically from harming others. And that shit pisses me off when someone harms other people. And we have this world agenda kind of going on with a lot of harm going out to our kids, and all these variety of things. And men aren't just saying something. And I know from my research and understanding in psychology and manipulation, there has been an agenda to emasculate men. Like I'm almost 40, and then you go down 30 and 20. It's even worse and worse and worse, where men aren't supposed to be men. They're not supposed to be strong. They're not supposed to fight. They're not supposed to do any of these things, which we've done forever. And it's like in our DNA, like you're massive, but I'd still want to fight you. Like I wouldn't want you to hurt me, but like in a training scenario, I would want to test myself to be like, holy smokes, like, all right, this guy wins, but like, what are we capable of? You know what I mean? It's like, it's a fun thing, especially done in brotherhood. You know what I mean? It's not like, right. So I put you on a snowboard to do something. That's something I could teach you, but in strength and in martial arts or whatever, like there's going to be this give and take, but there's a value to that competition and to that masculinity used in a right way, because you never go mess with someone, and especially a man and his family, when they're strong. If there's a bunch of predators around your house, no one is going to your house, because they're like, don't go to that one. That will be a bad idea. Now your family's safe, and we're addressing, okay, there's some issues out there, but we're not being confrontational. We just have the strength to protect. And I feel that's so important. And sometimes that's just a no. And that's why I feel like it's like in Canada, it's been so much worse. And I've kind of commented on the American stuff. I was like, if you don't say no when something's so messed up, they keep going. And they're going to keep going until the hard no happens. And it doesn't mean you hate them. It just means that you have to say no to whatever the agenda, whatever the person is, and to peacefully go the other way, but you're also getting a no.
It's establishing healthy boundaries, and everybody needs boundaries. Everybody needs to have boundaries, and everybody needs to be pushed to their boundaries and push back. And, to set their limits. It's like magnetism, I guess. You got push and pull always with everything. And so it's, as above.
Your audio. Oh, there you go.
Atomic structure. We've got push and pull at the atomic level, which just builds on itself. It's fractals, builds on itself, and it becomes everything, and it comes out as one person pushing or pulling against another person. It's the way of the universe. And it's if you don't establish your boundaries, you get run over. And you get run over and you get trampled until you stand up and push back. Sometimes it takes a lot, but sometimes it doesn't take much. And it usually takes less early on if you establish your boundaries early. But it takes a little bit more, I guess, being secure with yourself to do that. And that's where I think a lot of people are losing it, because they're not sure who they are.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And it's with the knowing who you are, right? And then having some sort of physical mastery, in my opinion, anyway. That's what martial arts taught me, was to know myself, but have some sort of physical capacity, so then I could have my boundaries, but also have the confidence to stand up when I needed to. But it's not in an aggressive, weak way. There's a very different way when you're coming from a level of strength and not being combative, but also truth. It's just like, look, this is who I am. This is what's going on. It's just a no. And if you don't, what happens is you end up being a follower rather than a leader. And we have to lead ourselves. We have to have our own critical thinking and not just go with the masses. And I think at a subconscious level or a primal level, many people are very weak-minded, and they want to be led because it's safer within the group. And whatever the group herd is doing, what everyone's doing, it's safer in there because you're a collective. And then one of the tricks that they use, for people who are outliers, is they shout, names, right? They want to shame you, and they want to guilt you, and they want to, do all these things to try to belittle you, to get you to come over. But that's the only tactic they have. Right? Because they're not using reason, they're not using dialogue, they're not using critical thinking, they're not using compassion, which are all available. And a discussion is always fine. And we might end up disagreeing, but especially with men, I think having that strength. And if you can just establish strength in body, that's how you move into strength in mind and strength in spirit. And that's what I was always taught in martial arts, that it's mastery. The easiest thing to master at first is the body, because you can just show up. But as you're trying to master the body, the mind is there with the inner dialogue. You start to learn to switch it, right, you're getting bigger and bigger. And then that's where the spiritual comes in. There's this apex. And then all of a sudden they're kind of synergistically working, and you're learning how to work with the energy systems of your body. Because I'm not sure if this has happened when you pull big things or do your world records, but I know when I interviewed the Shaolin monks, they use like, you know, like energy, right? They'll focus on their body and get really intense about the fingertips for breaking stone, right? Some people are liars, but this guy could do it for real. But what he also did was poke a damn tree for years. There's dent holes outside the tree. His fingers, the fingers were little mallets, right? So it's the synergy that made it available.
Yeah, I've actually seen those finger dents. I've been to the temple, the Shaolin temple. Yeah, it's wild. I put my finger in it, you know. It's like 600 years of poking their fingers at it. It's pretty cool. It's wild. But no, you're absolutely right, man. It is the strength is foundational. And the more you know your body, the more you're going to know your mind. And the more you know your mind, the more you know yourself spiritually. And I think that's a great way of putting it, because the one feeds into the next, and then it circles back around and it starts to fuel itself.
Yeah. And when you said that, I kind of got a new like image for this, like, I don't know, little spiral sequence. And then one thing can kind of help the other. And one of the things that they, you know, scientists say, or many people agree with, is that if you're super depressed, just go for a walk, right? And then go to the gym if you can. Right. Just getting the body moving is so critical. And then you look at people who have mastery, like Socrates, or like high achievers. 9 times out of 10, they have mastered the physical body in some way that's compelling to them. It doesn't have to be specifically strength. It could be sport. It could be anything, some way to use the body where they are knowing themselves, because you can't describe how challenging it is to push yourself past your limits, which I know you do through Strongman, which I've done in a variety of different ways. But that feeling and that uncertainty each time you go past, and then it realizes like, oh, well, what am I capable of now that I've just broken that limit? Now what's possible? Now what's possible? Is there an end to this? And that increases your capacity for everything else you're doing. And it also takes you out of the victim mode of needing someone to help you, because you know you have the capacity within. And that right there is huge, because fundamentally it's like, you know, daddy government, please help me, or something outside, give me a handout, because I can't stand up. I don't have that strength.
That's one of the things. I'm not proud of myself for a lot of the things that I've done, but I am proud of the fact that I never asked for a handout. I see a lot of guys who are in my similar situation, standing on street corners asking for donations, for help. You know, please, hungry, please help. I never asked for a handout. And I think it's important to ask for a hand up, but not a handout. This whole give me something, please, because I'm too pathetic to do it on my own. You have to initiate it. I'll help you, but you have to initiate whatever it is you need help with. I'm not going to do it for you. And it's wrong for people to just give stuff to people over and over and just hoping that if I give them enough stuff, maybe they'll catch on and start doing it themselves. Because that's not how it works. It's not how it works.
Yeah. And, you know, it makes people dependent and lazier. And in Canada, they're doing this one thing with, you know, basically drugs and clinics and making it free. Right. And then you can go there and get these drop off clinics. And every single town they've done that, all they see is an increase in drugs and an increase in homelessness. And so people who don't have that issue now, there's 1 or 2, now there's a couple hundred. It makes it unsafe for the people there. And this isn't to say don't help people who need help. It says we need systems or ways that, you know, are going to be effective. And it's like in training, you're like, okay, you know, you and I are training people in squats, and every time, you know, a month later, people are training with me and everybody gets injured. Well, okay, I might be intending to help you train squats, but all I do is injure you. You want to choose a different model that's going to work and create the result that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I think, you know, there's a fine line with those clinics. It's just like anything else, you know, where if you make things too easy for someone, they're just going to take advantage, and they're just going to, like you say, get lazier, get weaker, and ask for more. But you know, circling back to the training and being foundational, when you're lifting weights and you want to increase your strength, there's no way that's given to you. There's no way that can be given to you. So it's such a great way for people to learn like how to fight, how to struggle, and how to get the rewards from those struggles. With 5-pound increment increase, where you increase your deadlift from 900 to 905, and it took you 3 years to do it. But goddamn, that 5 pounds feels awesome when you get
it. Cut that number in half, and then still you're not like half the audience. Like that's just it. Yeah. Well, out of curiosity, what are some of your world records, and what have you deadlifted? That's pulling, for people who don't know, it's pretty, you pulling the weight off the ground, Google it. It's like the primary movement when they want to know how strong you are. It's deadlift and then squat.
Yeah. It's the best I've ever deadlifted on a normal bar with normal plates. Because in Strongman, we use lots of different size, height bars. Sometimes it's at 18 inches. Sometimes it's on a really long bar. But with a normal bar and normal plates, 925.
Holy shit.
Which is that's just middle of the pack now for the top 10 or 20 guys, which is really frustrating. I'm the first man who ever loaded a 500-pound Atlas stone. It was 520 to 4 feet. And the stone is the round concrete spheres that you pick up and put on in this case, a 4-foot platform. I had the heaviest stone series. I broke my record for the heaviest stone series. I think it has since been broken because that was 2009 when I set that. I think somebody's broken it since. I had, light set, heavy set, Guinness World Records, all for Atlas stones. Most of my records for Atlas stones. I did have the axle world record, which is a 2-inch thick bar with, it's one solid piece. It doesn't spin, like have weights and then spin inside the weights. So cleaning it to the shoulders is difficult. I had that for about 5 minutes at 409. And then Derek Poundstone beat it with 414 on his next attempt. I had circus dumbbell world record, 210 for 9 reps. That's a big one, giant dumbbell that you clean with 2 hands to the shoulder and then press with 1. So 210 for 9 reps. I had the circus dumbbell at the Arnold world record, 242 for 3 reps. But again, Poundstone broke that 2 minutes later on his. So, what else? Husafel. So a stone carry, a 400-pound stone.
Is that the one that's like kind of like a V?
It's kind of coffin shaped. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of holding it. And you're trying to,
Yeah. This was with a metal one that you could add weight to. So it's 400-pound metal coffin shaped stone. I had the world record on that. That's the one that I got a couple of years ago.
Oh, good for you.
My first full year back competing, I got that record on the Strongman Champions League World Championship. I had a tire flip world record, 400 kilos, 880 for, I believe it was 80 feet. I think it was somewhere in the 35-second range. So it was like 8 or 9 flips, something like that.
Nuts. See, and it's so amazing to hear these records because, again, I've been using a little bit more on the podcast because I've moved a little bit more into strength training. Like the absurdity of the numbers, if you look at them, and if you ever picked up a weight, when you first start training, a 200-pound deadlift is a lot. And when you go to like your maximum point of deadlift, and you make sure you're doing proper form if you are doing these things, you're like the weight feels like it's crushing you. It's like, every time you kind of get to that, it's like the weight is almost crushing you. So to know that you're doing that, the average person can now set their barometer like a 4-minute mile, be like, okay, well, if this guy can pick up 900 friggin' pounds, the average person should be able to do, a third of that. And that's still absurd. And that's way more than most because they're not valuing the physical training aspect, which moves into all other areas. It's not just that thing, right? You're obviously a professional at what you do, but it's just inspiring to hear because it's like, it's just like, it's like with the Shaolin monks, it's like impossible. It's like, it's how the fuck do you lift up that much weight? It's so ridiculous.
A funny story. When I started training again in 2016, My first deadlift workout, I pulled 405 for 3 reps, and I thought I broke my back. It crushed me. It was
And this
so.
is after your 4 years off, right?
Yeah. This is after, deadlifting in the 900-pound range before. So I'm sitting here, like 40%, 45% of my old max, and did 3 reps, and I couldn't walk the next day. I was so sore. And I thought, how in the hell did I do so much weight before? Like how, I mean, I've power cleaned 405. How did I do that? I can hardly deadlift now. But that's that one foot in front of the other, and having faith that the road will rise up to meet you. You go to 425, then you go to 455, then you go to 475, and it always feels heavy. It always feels hard when you're pulling that maximum effort. It's just the number changes. When I pulled in training, I pulled an 855 a couple years ago, and it felt just about as hard as the 405 did when I first came back to lifting. It's just weird how that happens. Your body just adapts, but the mind always perceives what the top end is as the same amount of heavy. Mm-hmm. I guess you learn to grind a little bit harder.
Yeah, man. Well, that's crazy. And dude, huge congrats to come back from, so 4 years off, getting to the bottom of your own experience and then coming back and being like a fraction of what you were, to be like, I'm going to get this back, because it can be you understand it's a long road ahead. And because you put in the work before, you understood it was one day at a time. And that if you show up consistently with your goals over a long enough time period, you're going to continue to accelerate. And I think that that's important. Whatever we're going to be putting our aim towards, a worthy goal, a little bit at a time, you can do extraordinary things in 1, 2, 3 years. And you don't just go from never deadlifting to massive amounts in a year, but however, a little bit over time for 5 years with a little decent training program, you're going to be doing what you once thought was impossible. And now you've integrated that into your being. Now you go, oh, okay, well, what else could I apply this to? And then you just do the same thing again. So if you've mastered one thing, whether it's art, music, sport, physicality, you can apply that with any other thing, because you learn about the path of mastery and what it takes to do it. And it really boils down to a vision and consistency. And I'm sure with your training, you get better over time. It's not a perfect training program that's going to get you there. You just learn over time, and it becomes a little bit more tailored, a little bit better. You learn along the way, but the important thing is to make the consistent effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you do what you thought was impossible, it makes everything possible in your mind. If you never thought you could deadlift 500 pounds, then the day you pull 500 pounds, you start, like exactly what you just said, you start thinking, well, what else am I limiting myself on? Maybe I can climb that mountain. Maybe I can get that job. Maybe I can, pack up and move across the country for, whatever reason. You don't have to sit there and think limited beliefs, self-limiting beliefs. It opens up a world of possibility. And that's something I don't think I ever realized when I was younger, is just what I was doing by dedicating myself daily to training. It was just something I liked to do. It was something I never really thought about. I had to do it. I was obsessed with it. But it led me to the point where, when I decided I wanted to go to World's Strongest Man, that was it. I was 100% going to World's Strongest Man. And I had people laugh at me and people say, oh, whatever, it's not going to happen. It didn't matter. And then, of course, I got to World's Strongest Man inside, a couple of years after I trained for 10 years. And then I started Strongman. It took me 2 years to get to the first world championship. Sorry, 3 years. But yeah, that's a good point, man. If you do what you think is impossible one time, that opens a floodgate to anything else that you want to do.
Absolutely. 100%. And then you shared another just important thing. Again, it took you you've been training for 3 years dedicating to the strongman. So it's a 3-year journey to get to that goal. So it doesn't happen overnight. So many people want that quick fix. So whatever you're doing, wherever your journey is, now I say, give yourself 10 years. So if I have a new goal that I'm really inspired, I'm like, okay, cool, 10 years, a little bit over time, and I'm just going to dedicate to it. And if you don't want to give yourself 10 years of dedication toward a goal, maybe you're not clear enough on what inspires you, what you're curious about, what you're passionate about, because it should be something that you're just so excited to see what you're capable of doing rather than be attached to the result.
Yeah. And then maybe break your goal up into smaller chunks so that you got, checkpoints along the way. So you got some crazy big goal over here, but have 5 different goals along the way. So I want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Well, let's start a business first. And then let's increase that to 10 employees. Then let's increase that to 100 employees with 10 managers. Then we'll increase that to, three branches or whatever. But yeah, you don't just start here and think Fortune 500. And that's my goal. It's 10 years worth of 2-year goals.
Yeah, 100%. And that's how the wisdom is formed, because without that, right, there's, like you said, there's no shortcut to getting strong, right? You have to put in the work. There's no other way around it. You have to go through all of that intangible stuff, and you grow as an individual. It's the same with any endeavor, but that's how you get the wisdom to make it your own. And I always loved Bruce Lee's philosophy on everything. Is like, in martial arts, it wasn't one style, make it your own. You know what I mean? But as you explore all these different styles in your own journey, you get to kind of take the knowledge in those templates and then uniquely craft it to your own preference. But it's going to require your wisdom and understanding to know how to tweak it to what you prefer.
Exactly. I like that.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been a pleasure, bro. I could talk to you all day. I appreciate you sharing that story. I'm glad you're on the other side doing some amazing work out there. If you're deadlifting less than 500 pounds, reach out to Travis. Even if you've never started the journey,
even if you've never even did a day in your life. Yeah, I love working with people from all beginner to professional, man. I love it.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or you want to leave the listeners with before we close the show?
No, man. I think we need to set up another one though. We got plenty more to talk about.
Heck yeah, man. I'm totally open for that. So if people want to dive in and they want to look at your work, they want to follow you, they want to stay in touch, where should they go?
Best place is my Instagram, Travis Ortmayer, just my name. There may be an underscore, Travis _Ortmayer. I'm the only Travis Ortmayer out there, so it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah, find the biggest. You're the only one, and you're the biggest one, so it shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, there we go. I like that. I'm the biggest Travis Ortmayer.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys, for watching. See you in the next one.